everyone, I hope you all are doing really well. Saboni this side, and in this video I'm going to talk about Argo CD. So what is Argo CD? It is a declarative GitOps continuous delivery tool for Kubernetes environments. What it does is it pulls the desired application states from a Git repo and applies them to your cluster. Before understanding and showing you how Argo CD works, so let's try to understand first what is GitOps. So many of you might be already acquainted with DevOps, and many of you definitely might have been knowing what is GitOps. But just to give you a brief overview, it is an operational framework that takes DevOps best practices that is used for application development, which is version control, collaboration, any kind of compliance, CI/CD, as well as any application for your specifically for your infrastructure automation. Okay. So ideally what developers used to do is all the code, whenever infrastructure as code is also utilized for provisioning of infrastructure along with your application as well, there's a tendency to include all the code in a single repository. However, GitOps gives you the best practices and suggestion of segregating those code repos. So instead, any kind of infrastructure or configuration based code, you separate that to a separate repo, and your application specific source code should be maintained separately. With this gives you a better control with a proper version control mechanism as well as access mechanisms as well. So the principles of GitOps mainly comprises of the three major components, which is infrastructure as code, and followed by merge request and a continuous integration and development or delivery pipeline. So your infrastructure that you are provisioning to run your workloads, it should have the capability, you should have the capability of creating, destroying, or recreating as and when needed with a proper version controlled mechanism. Any changes that you are making to your infrastructure code should be mediated with the help of a merge request that should be properly validated by your team members or peer reviews. And there has to be a continuous integration and development pipeline that would validate the changes that you have pushed before deploying to production. So this is what a typical CI/CD pipeline looks like. So if you are a new developer in a tech company, or if you are in your new DevOps team, so what you would generally do is take a feature branch out of your main or trunk branch. And what you would do is whatever changes that you would need to make, you commit it to your branch, and there has to be a continuous integration pipeline that would validate your change. So a typical pipeline could be it could be a Jenkins pipeline, or it could be a code pipeline where code build is used in case of AWS environments, or it could be GitHub Actions or Travis or Bamboo. There are a number of options available. So once you make your changes, there has to be certain validation scripts that would run, test cases that would run, that would validate, okay, your changes are valid and it's not creating any conflicts. And then there has to be some senior members or your peers within your team that would validate and provide a manual approval. And once that is done, your branches would be merged with the main branch. And then there goes the continuous delivery mechanism, which is the CD pipeline. Now in the CD pipeline, typically it could be, you can definitely use Jenkins, but this is where Argo CD would come up in case of Kubernetes based environments. And what it generally does is it refers to this specific main branch or the desired production branch, and it maintains the steady state of your application. So the next part, say for example, I'm just going to show you how a typical CI/CD pipeline works in a scenario. So the developer develops the code, they test their code locally, they push their code, then the pipeline, it builds the image, pushes it to a repository. It could be Docker Hub or ECR. And after that, what is that? In a typical Kubernetes-based environment, there has to be a manifest file or Helm charts. If you're using, it would make the update over there. regarding the use of the latest image for your workloads. After that, those changes, those manifest files are applied to your cluster. So this is what a scenario of a single CI/CD pipeline is. So it could be, but one of the major challenges with this kind of mechanism is if you are using a single pipeline, you do not have the visibility of what the pipeline would not have the visibility of what is actually happening within the cluster after it has pushed the changes. Whether the application is successfully updated with the latest image, or whether the scaling has taken place successfully or not. So those kind of visibility you do not have. And at this point of time where Argo CD comes into the picture. So your typical single CI/CD pipeline is broken into two parts. One is the CI part, where you are continuously integrating, creating the build and pushing it and updating it to your repository, which is a Git repository. For example, in this case, it could be GitHub. And you have this Argo CD component. What it would do, it would refer to your repository as a source, and the destination would be the Kube API server of the specific cluster. And it would continuously monitor what kind of changes or any new things have been updated in the repo. That is in terms of, it could be a Helm chart, it could be a customized chart, it could be simple manifest as well. And it would keep on keeping your application up and steady. So this specific block on the top is the single CI pipeline, and use of Argo CD comes under like a typical use case of a CD pipeline. So let's see a simple example. Say for example, there in your application, you are using GitHub, and the replica count of a specific application that you are running as in your Kubernetes cluster, it requires a replica count to be 2. Okay, so Argo CD would try to maintain that number of replicas. And say for example, now if you have done a commit and you want to scale that for a specific event because of incoming sales or incoming any kind of events. Now, as soon as the GitHub in your Git code, you are increasing the replica count to 3, there is there is a shift in the difference between the number, right? So as soon as Argo CD notices that, it triggers, it scales the number of pods accordingly in order to keep the state as specified in your Git repo. Now consider another scenario where your replica count is already 3, and you as a developer have directly tried to initiate a scaling action in your cluster using kubectl command. In certain scenarios, again, Argo CD would refer Git as the single source of truth. And even if you have, for a split second of time, you would observe that the replica count has reduced, Argo CD would again increase. It would interact with the Kube API server to increase the replica count to 3. Okay, so this is how Argo CD works. In the next part of this video, I'll be showing you a demo where I have created a sample application for myself, and I have utilized a Minikube cluster, and over there I've installed Argo CD. It would be a detailed, in-depth session in the next video. Hope you will enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.